Thank you to Tony Benton and Rainier Avenue Radio for letting us be part of this incredible week of events, recognizing that Earth deserves more than a day. My name is Al Sanders. I'm part of Metro's communications team, specifically a public information officer, providing information about our regional mobility system and how it can help you, in the words of one of my old bosses, get you from a place to a place. As we start, to those who are listening and seeing us, just quick idea. Hopefully you're taking light rail, bus, hopping on the streetcar. I'm going to admit that since 2020, I've been working mostly from home, so I no longer ride transit 5 days a week. But when I do go into the office, I take a bus. The number 107 brings me down the hill from Skyway and to get on the light rail at Rainier Beach Station. For those of you who are riding the bus, I'm hoping you're riding and tapping with your ORCA card. If you don't have an ORCA card, if you're 18 and younger and you don't have an ORCA card, there's a couple of links that have just come up that I want you to be familiar with. For our folks 18 and younger, the free youth transit pass, please go ahead and apply and get on. Yes, I know you really don't need one to ride, but we like numbers. And when you board and you tap, we get an idea of how many people are riding and what we need to do possibly going forward on expanding service. That's why it's vital that we have that information. For those of us who 18 was a long time ago, go to the MyORCA card, myorca.com. It can get you information not only on how to apply for an ORCA card, but you can see if you can qualify for one of our reduced fare programs. As we get ready to go, I'm going to provide a little of a history lesson and how it ties into what we're discussing this afternoon. Once upon a time, buses looked like this. Nice Red Rover. That's the first bus I remember riding, taking that up to Northgate, to the Northgate Theater. The thing I remember most about those buses, beyond being able to slide the window far enough that I could stick half my body out of it, was the large plume of black smoke that trailed behind me. And these are the buses that we were using going into the 60s and into the early 70s. But I also grew up riding one of these buses. I knew this bus is the number 4. It used to go from my house on 23rd Avenue East all the way to the Seattle Center. Doesn't do that anymore. Back then, I didn't know I was part of the zero emission revolution. That little bus is one of Seattle's electric trolleys, one of Seattle's older electric trolleys. It's our region's original zero emission buses. We're going to move forward to today. Metro and other transit systems throughout the country, throughout the world, are focused on reducing greenhouse gases to combat climate change. They're doing it by creating frequent, reliable, and clean mobility systems that encourage people to leave their cars at home if they have a car and use that mobility system to get where they need to go. And by transitioning to zero emission vehicles. In 2020, I was proud to be part of the group that gave the last diesel bus its gold tire and sent it into retirement. It was ready to retire. It went fishing. We gave them balloons, a gold tire, and we sent it home. We are now one of a handful of large transit agencies in the US that no longer have diesel-only vehicles in our fleet. We have electric trolleys. We have diesel battery hybrid buses. Think of those like a Prius, just much bigger. And battery electric buses. King County is proud to be a national leader in this effort. We have battery electric buses that are already in our fleet, and they're being joined by BEVs, which is what I'm going to refer them to from now on as this. These buses with their nice bright colors have started arriving, and they're going to be testing and on the road next year. Today's panel is a discussion on our zero emission fleet, how our transition is playing a role in King County's overall effort to reduce greenhouse gases, and your role in helping reduce GHGs in our region. There are challenges in this effort, which happens on projects as big and as transformative as this. But there has been tremendous progress in King County's effort to achieve its goal of reducing community-wide greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030 and by 80% by 2050 in comparison to 2007. With that, I want to introduce you to the panel that's going to drive this conversation. Adrian Down, and I'm going to ask people to raise their hands before we start. Adrian, who is Metro's Zero Emissions Program Deputy Director. Adam Salamak, who's Metro's Environmental Affairs Officer. Heena Vahora, who along with being a transit rider, college student, and a youth advocate, is also co-chair of Metro's Mobility Equity Cabinet. Seth Worden, who's Metro's Transit Maintenance Analyst, and who started at Metro as a mechanic. He can probably remembers those old red buses. Hopefully I didn't age you too much, Seth. And King County Councilmember Deshaun Quinn. Prior to being appointed to the County Council in January, Deshaun was Metro's Assistant General Manager for Strategy and Partnership. He was part of Metro's sustainability team. He was also a member of the Tukwila City Council. This is going to be a conversation. Some of the topics we're going to be discussing will be on Metro's sustainability efforts, the zero emission program, and some of the challenges surrounding that effort. But first of all, I'm going to let people introduce themselves. We'll go ahead and start with the council member, and we'll go down the line.
Good afternoon. My name is Deshaun Quinn. I'm the King County Council member for District 5, which is Des Moines, Normandy Park, Kent, Renton, SeaTac, and Tukwila.
Hey everyone, I'm Seth Worden. I'm now a fleet analyst at King County Metro, which means I participate in the purchasing of buses and dealing with bus incidents, but I do technical training for mechanics. I've been with Metro for almost 14 years.
Hi, my name is Adrian Down, is he, him pronouns, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Zero Emissions Program for King County Metro.
Hello, y'all. I'm Heena. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the current co-chair of King County Metro's Mobility Equity Cabinet, and I'm also a student at the University of Washington.
Hello, I'm Autumn Salamak. I also use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Environmental Affairs Officer for Metro. So I work across all of the divisions at Metro and with our Executive Climate Office on a lot of different programs related to climate action.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to start off with an easy one. Why is Metro transforming to a zero emissions?
Sure. Oh, yeah. Thank you for the question. So you've heard a little bit already about Metro's ambitious climate goals, and those really stem from the county's climate goals. Some of those are expressed in the county's strategic climate action plan, which the 2020 update to that plan established the goal for us to transition to 100% zero emissions fleet. We want to do this to reduce our climate impact. Obviously, reducing our climate impact, that's one of Metro's, one of our core values. It benefits all the communities that we serve. There's other more direct benefits too that the communities that Metro serves can see from the zero emissions transition. These zero emissions buses, they reduce the air pollution impacts in those communities where our buses operate. They also are quieter, so there's less noise impacts in those communities. So it's really primarily driven by climate, but it provides a lot of other benefits to communities as well.
Autumn, if I could ask you for those, we use a lot of acronyms. If you could give a little background, an idea on the Strategic Climate Action Plan, holistically, including Metro, but all of the plan 14 counties.
Sure. So our strategic climate action plan has been in place since 2012. And as Adrian mentioned, we just updated it. So it will be going to County Council with the new 2025 version soon. And that's really a 5-year roadmap that helps identify key goals, priority actions, and performance targets for community-wide actions and operational actions at King County. And the Strategic Climate Action Plan, we sometimes call it the SCAP, is focused very much on reducing greenhouse gas emissions from transportation, building energy use, waste generation, overall consumption, and a few other categories. It also has specific goals and priority actions for preparing our communities and our physical assets for the impacts of climate change. So really thinking through, how are we going to keep people safe? How are we going to keep our infrastructure safe and our services, our county services up and running as we are dealing with increased extreme heat events and wildfire smoke and drought and other types of impacts from climate change. And then the third section of the Strategic Climate Action Plan really looks at how we can make sure we are providing equitable climate action with a focus on sustainable and resilient frontline communities. So it's really taking this equity lens and applying it to all of our climate action work to ensure that there aren't unintended negative consequences associated with the actions that we're making, and that we are intentionally looking to provide services to those community members that have been historically marginalized and most impacted by climate change. At Metro, we've really played a key role in helping to develop that plan each iteration, and we play a really important role in implementing the climate action plan and in driving overall greenhouse gas emissions reductions for the community. And we do that in 2 key ways. One is the services that we provide, and the other is how we provide those services and how we operate. So in terms of the services that we provide, every mobility service that Metro offers is helping to provide reductions in greenhouse gas emissions by giving people affordable, convenient, safe, reliable access to transportation to get them where they need to go without driving alone. How we provide those services covers everything from the fuel that we're using in our vehicles to the amount of energy and the type of energy that we're using in our bus spaces and our facilities, how we are designing those facilities. So really looking at green building standards, looking for water conservation and sustainable landscaping options, looking at how we can also work on transit-oriented development to reduce the need for people to have to drive to access services and to get to their homes and to get them close to those transit hubs. So it's a really broad body of work around climate action at the county, and Metro is a key player in helping to achieve our community goals and to reduce our county operational emissions too.
Councilmember, you've worked on a couple of levels. You've worked on the local, and you're now working on the county level to achieve these. You're in Tequila, which is where our bases are located. The 2 first bases are located. You give a little idea of how much working on reducing climate change is going to benefit the city of Tequila and the region as a whole?
Yeah, definitely. One, it can benefit the region as a whole significantly, but in particularly in the districts that I represent, Tukwila is a great example. They have high pollution rates, poor air quality, and so it's going to benefit significantly. And as you mentioned before, this is how we combat climate change, through a deliberate placement of the 2 charging facilities at the city. Also, South King County has had to deal with a lot of noise and air pollution. But again, the bases at King County, South Base facility and Tukwila Base. And I remember in the inception of that, where we did an overlay of economics, health outcomes, and that informed the siting decision. Not only that, but there's a lot of idling at these facilities. And so to have it based in a community, and in particular, Black, Indigenous, people of color community, is significant because they are on the forefront of climate impacts. And I think it's a great demonstration on how we actually advance climate equity. And then just kind of talking about the SCAP development and also the policy updates. The thing that I really appreciate about King County is we're pretty clear about where our values are. So equity and sustainability are at the center of our values. And when we started the mobility framework, that was kind of the key message that we went, but we also had to demonstrate it, which is why we invited community members to participate, and especially those who are impacted the most. And that helped us develop. So I went from a mobility framework to then the policy updates, and we embedded those things. And so not only do we have bases in South King County, what we're saying is if you want new services, bus services, it's going to be in South King County, right? Because that is where, and this is the commitment between the equity through the ESJ plan, but also the strategic climate action plan, is investing where needs are greatest. And so those investments are going to start in South King County in my district. And one of the things I forgot to mention during my introduction is I'm actually the chair of the Transportation, Economy, and Environment Committee. So I'm looking forward to the 2025 updates to see how much progress we've made. We know that the commitment is to get to 80% greenhouse gas emission reductions by 2050. So really excited, but it's at the core. If I've always said this when it comes to policy, and I'm a huge champion of policy, is if you make investments on the margins, you bring the whole community along.
Heena, we've talked about community. Community is important. I know part of what you're doing is trying to emphasize to young people just what their role is, that they're going to be coming after us, and how they can have an impact. And it may be as simple as, once again, deciding not to buy that beat up car and getting on a bus or light rail or a water taxi. How do you make that outreach?
Yeah, so I grew up in South King County, and transit has always been more than just getting from point A to point B for me. It's all about opportunity, connection, access to spaces and dreams that really shape our lives and also our futures. Climate change today is one of the biggest challenges of our time, and young people really know it, and we can also really feel it. King County Metro is not just talking about climate action. I feel like we're also leading with equity and making sure that we're addressing the benefits of a greener transit that reaches the communities that we need the most, including young people, folks that come from low-income families, folks who have been historically faced with the worst environmental impacts. I feel like when young people are able to ride these buses, they know they're doing something good for the planet. They know that they're doing something good for their future, and they can really feel it. And that the systems they're writing, they know that the systems they're writing every day is getting cleaner.
Seth, wanted to loop you in because we are talking about buses. What type of buses are currently in Metro's fleet, and how is the battery electric buses, the BEVs, the next step?
How does it act as our next step?
Yes.
Yes, well, I wish I brought the exact numbers. We're around 1,200 buses, I think. And currently we have 40 BE buses in service. Those are battery electric buses with no engines in them. We have 89 more buses on order. We have 2 of them here now for testing. And I'm really optimistic about the improvements even from the first series of buses to the second series of buses. We already have an extra 100 kilowatt hours battery storage, and that's extra range, extra convenience for our dispatchers and drivers, and more service. We are fortunate as an agency to have started a long time ago with electric drive buses. So in 2004, we bought buses that were hybrid, which means it has a diesel engine still, but it has an electric motor for drive instead of a conventional transmission. And so all of our employees, 100% of them are used to high voltage power, working with high voltage batteries, and of course, working on buses. So I'm really pleased that we're ready for the BEV transition. It's not going to be too much of a shock to our system, actually.
There are questions about how they operate. There are some questions people have about will they run out of juice going up Queen Anne Hill for those rare snowstorms that we get? And they are, fortunately, knock on wood, fairly rare. Are they going to run out of juice? For those people who are concerned, what can we do to tell them that these are not going to die on?
So our buses, it's an odd bus thing, but buses don't have fuel gauges. They just have large fuel tanks. But so BEB buses don't have fuel tanks at all. So we have, they programmed the buses to turn on a light when the fuel tank gets low. And likewise, on a BEB bus, when the state of charge gets low, a light comes on and an operator sees that light and they'll call the transit control center and say, hey, my light came on, it wasn't expected. How do we want to handle this? They'll usually tell them to finish the trip and we'll get another bus out to them if that's the case. But during normal operation, the route assigned is within the limits of the bus. So that's going to be a rare occasion. And I'm not too concerned about being delayed. If a battery electric bus sits, it's not burning the power because it's sitting and waiting where it's waiting for the traffic to clear or whatever.
And I was going to add too, I think one of the cool things that you and your team are doing, Seth, is all that testing up front. You mentioned that we have delivery of some of those buses now. We get them before we put them into service and before the public sees them. We're doing that testing. We're running those buses, doing those long range tests to understand how much range do we really get? What's that worst case scenario? So we send a bus out on the coldest day of the year. What's that battery range going to look like so that we can make sure we're putting that bus onto a route where it's going to be able to meet the service need.
Yes, very good point. It's a fact about bus purchases that you're meant to keep a bus for at least 12 years. We'll keep them for 16 or 20 years sometimes, but you're meant to keep it for 12 years. So people might say, well, why don't you just go out and buy all battery electric buses? Well, we need to continue using the buses we've already promised to use up. And then on top of that, battery electric bus technology is advancing pretty quickly. And so if you just buy everything now, you're missing out on some of the new stuff. We miss out on the opportunity to troubleshoot and make stuff better before they build another bus. Our extensive testing is trying to future-proof us. We don't want to buy a whole fleet of buses that all have the same problem because then we can't maintain service.
Moving from buses to alternatives. We talked a little about some of the options that are available, water taxi and others. What else is going on outside of the battery electric buses to reduce air pollution?
All right, and I will defer to Autumn Salamak as well, but a big part of the SCAP is, a big part of it is reducing transportation impacts. And so having alternative forms of transportation also help. And the way I look at it is the first last mile, and especially in my community, first last mile is a little bit away from the main line, right? And so we've been expanding mobility options to provide more service that helps reduce overall air pollution from people driving alone, getting people where they need to go. So the dollar ride, there was an announcement last year with Councilmember Zahalai, where you get an on-demand service to the main line, so to main light rail or light rail service. And then the Metro Flex, which I'm really excited about the expansion because, again, it goes into communities that I represent and where I'm from. And it's kind of that first last mile to reach in and grab them. I mean, if we're going to reduce, 300,000 car trips to get to Metro Connects, we got to get people to the main line. We got to get people to use kind of our first last mile service, accessible service. And especially it's going into communities like Skyway, Rainier Beach, Delridge, and also South King County. I think we need to figure out, give real options for people to use transit, right? And so that is getting to where they are and bringing them to the main line, because otherwise I can't see us reaching that 300,000 reduction of daily trips. I also think what also needs to happen for those things to work is land use. And significantly, and again, I represent 6 cities, and we all need to work with other cities to make sure that their land use is beneficial for our buses and transits to get to the people that we need to get to. So we need to see success again in Dollar Ride and Via and Flex Service and other options so we actually get people out of cars. That's how you reduce greenhouse gas emissions and single car occupancy. Sorry.
No, that's absolutely right, Councilmember Quinn. So as the Councilmember was just noting, this growth in service is really important. And in 2024, we added 150,000 hours of bus service, which equates to about 7% more weekday bus trips and about 10% more bus trips on the weekends. We also expanded that Metro Flex on-demand transit service to connect the South Park and Delridge neighborhoods, which really improves access to transportation in historically underserved areas. Because this transition to a zero emission fleet is going to take time, it's not something we can just do overnight. We are constantly looking at all of the other ways that we can reduce emissions from our fleets now. So really looking at how we can operate those most effectively and efficiently, and then looking at what fuel options we do have. So last year, we were able to start transitioning our diesel fuel use for those hybrid buses to renewable diesel. And renewable diesel is made from fats and oils like soybean or canola oil, and it burns cleaner than regular diesel, reducing carbon emissions by about 60%. The great thing about renewable diesel is that we can use it as a replacement for regular diesel without having to make any modifications to our buses or their engines. So it's a straight swap. And there was a recent news release also talking about how we're making that transition to renewable diesel for our water taxis as well. Metro operates a lot of different types of services. There's the van pool program, there's Metro Flex, our DART dial-a-ride service. We also have Access Paratransit, and we have specific goals and plans getting underway for how we can transition all of those fleets to zero emission fuels in the future, and then also looking at our sort of internal vehicles. We call them non-revenue vehicles, but like the internal vehicles we use for staff getting from place to place as well. So there's a lot of work happening on the fleet front to support this zero emission effort and to really complement it with some short-term immediate benefits for reducing air pollution for our communities as well.
Councilmember, if I can follow up on land use, people think about buildings. Another acronym that we use, transit-oriented development. You're talking about making it easier for folks to once again get from where they live to a transit outlet, whether that's a bus stop or a light rail stop. Can you expand a little on how we're working with partnering to establish better land use to help improve our reduction of greenhouse gases?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. Right, if we're going to get to address climate change, we're going to have to bring a bunch of people along, and that includes cities and Growth Management Act, land use decisions, even facilities and ADA accessibility, and we're going to have to partner. So we actually have a group that King County works with K4C, which is K for climate. What's the
King County Cities Climate Collaboration.
King County Cities Climate Collaboration. And I think what's been a challenge in the past is cities that have made land use decisions that have actually negatively impacted transit. Where the facilities are, TODs, other things, but it's also how do we make sure that land use planning also addresses like sidewalks, right? So people can get from their home safely to a bus route. Again, that's where VIA is helpful, but to get to the main line, to get to facilities, we need to have those investments. And then also and I'm going to take a step back a little bit and kind of dance in the space that I was in at the city. We make economic development decisions. And so where you locate kind of the heart of your cities, and then Metro and transit can serve those areas, right? And then I think the other piece, and I can't say it enough, housing and affordable housing is also a part of that, and increasing density where we can. to limit the length or how far a ride is, to get to a location. So it's density. It's just thinking about development with transit accessibility in mind, but it's also bringing the cities along to say that we're in this together, which also sends a message to their public that they're going to be part of the solution, which is absolutely critical.
I just wanted to add to that, our most recent transit-oriented development project is out at Northgate. So if you've been out there and you've seen that high-density mixed-use development that has occurred near the new light rail station and our bus hub, that's a really, intentional effort to provide affordable housing within that development to ensure that we are implementing our equitable transit-oriented communities policy and ensuring that as we build these projects and partner with other organizations and communities to build these projects, that we are including affordable elements, that we are utilizing green building design, and that we are intentional about minimizing and negating displacement of the communities that have historically lived in those areas and been able to afford those areas. So it's a complex, comprehensive process. It takes a long time to build those developments, but once a development goes in, it really sets the tone for what your transportation options are going to be long-term. So it's critical to be looking at transit-oriented development and to really be intentional about trying to maximize those opportunities and create those connections that Councilmember Quinn was talking about in terms of safe passageway to get from where people live and the services to those transit hubs.
Heena, if I can ask you, as you work with the equity cabinet, young people, how do we get them engaged? How do we get them to understand why we're doing this? Because there are going to be some that are concerned. There are potential environmental impacts of using zero emission, but how do we tell them these steps are long range, that we're going to be doing this to ensure that climate gets better?
Yeah, so my role as co-chair of King County Metro's Mobility Equity Cabinet is to ensure equity is at the center of every conversation that we have. And it's also an opportunity for me to invite young people into the space and to not just invite them, but to make them feel really included, making sure that their voices are really being heard, that their concerns are being heard, their ideas are being heard, and just creating spaces where we're able to set them up for success and set them up to thrive. We did have conversations with different youth in our community about zero admissions and hearing that they care very deeply about zero admissions, the transition to zero admissions, but many of our young people don't know that it's happening currently. And what young people really have been sharing is that they're really passionate about transportation and really passionate about creating a future that gives us cleaner air and a future that makes them feel hopeful and not harmful. And in some ways that we can engage more youth is just doing outreach to youth, meeting them in spaces where young people are at, including them into conversations, having youth representation on different committees and different boards, and just really like inviting them into spaces and setting up those spaces where they could thrive and they could succeed.
Thank you. This is transformative. This is going to be not only the vehicles, but the folks who are going to be operating and maintaining those vehicles. Do we want to expand on how this is going to change the jobs that are going to be available?
I'd like to address that because I like my job. And frankly, it didn't take a lot of education to get where I'm at. I did a 2-year program at a local technical college and then went on to working as a mechanic and then built on that experience. And I've had to adapt along the way because I finished tech school in 1989. So there's been a few years behind me. But I see it as a great opportunity for somebody who says, well, how do you get to be a mechanic? How do you get to be an electrician? How do you get to be a building operating engineer? They're sort of considered blue collar trades, but currently we have trades programs that are available right here in the town. I know I love the idea of the Seattle Promise, which is a program for Seattle school students that guarantees them an opportunity to go to community college for 2 years. And that's about what it takes to take a diesel or automotive program. Those are the kinds of people that we're looking for to hire for our 2-year apprenticeship. So if you're saying to yourself, I'm in high school now, and I am going to finish high school at 18 years old, and I can take advantage of the guaranteed college program and do a 2-year program for automotive or diesel technology. And once I've done that, I have 2 years under my belt towards a journeyman status. I can then get hired as an apprentice at a repair location, maybe King County. And that opportunity would give you 2 years of experience and get you a journeyman status. And that is a 6-figure income at the age of 22. So that sounds pretty good to me. And frankly, I just like my job because I get to solve problems. I get to look at things that are electrical and things that are mechanical, figure out how they work, and troubleshoot and repair. And working at the county, I have the resources. I can do it safely. I have a good shop to work in. Materials are available. We just fix the bus and send it back out again. And that's rewarding on a daily basis. So I hope that people out there that are not sure what they want to do after school will at least consider this type of trade. I also want to say that within Metro, people are surprised when I tell them that not only do we run buses, but we take care of our own buildings. We have our own electricians, building operating engineers, people who do our air conditioning and heating. There are a lot of careers at Metro. Somebody just told me we have a social media manager. So you don't even have to be a blue collar technician to do things at Metro. There's lots of numbers to run. There's people to manage. There are machines to fix. There are things to build. And so I hope you all will consider those types of careers in the future because they're good jobs.
Yeah, as part of our strategic climate action plan, there is also a strong focus on greening the workforce and really looking at how we can expand opportunities for both existing employees and community members, especially those community members coming from what we call our frontline communities, those folks who've been historically marginalized and are feeling the worst impacts from climate change, to really help them identify these pathways for how they can access employment at the county. So we have a Green Jobs Program Manager within Metro. There's a Green Jobs Program and Climate and Workforce Program within our Executive Climate Office. And they offer a lot of application clinics to help folks navigate the system for applying for a county job and to practice interview skills. And we often have that posted on our website when we have application clinics coming up. There was just an event in Tukwila back in March that was really well attended, and it's a great opportunity to talk with all different types of employees at Metro, because everybody who works at Metro is playing a really vital role in helping to support all of our climate action programs. And this zero emissions transition is really exciting and giving people an opportunity, like Seth was mentioning, to get in the door and really grow their career in what's going to be a high demand sector. It is a high demand sector now, and we expect it to continue to grow.
Councilmember, I want to touch base on partnerships. You talked about local, the community, but Metro and King County are working on a regional basis with regional partners on solving these challenges. Did you want to touch base a little on those partnerships?
Yeah, I touched a little bit on kind of the K4C, but King County does work with cities and other regional organizations, groups like the Puget Sound Regional Council, Puget Sound Clean Air Agency, and in particular, I would say in Tukwila, they have been significant in addressing some of the health issues. And, I think the partnership piece, again, I think other transit agencies like Sound Transit, there are many partners and jurisdictions that we work with, but I think the Puget Sound Regional Council is really good at kind of coordinating efforts. I don't know what's going on with my voice here. As it relates to addressing climate change, but also state organizations And again, cities are going to be a significant portion of that, but the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency actually has some commitments and dollars that they've used to address climate change and working with us as well.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was going to add a little bit on our coordination, particularly with utilities and some other regional agencies. So this is a big regional challenge, this electrification effort. Lots of different agencies, everybody's thinking about electrification these days. And so part of what we need to do to support this transition is communicate with the utilities about how much power we're going to need to power these buses to make sure that power is available when we need it. So we have good ongoing coordination with Puget Sound Energy as well as Seattle City Light. We're also coordinating with other agencies when there's partnership opportunities. So as an example, we've been talking mostly about buses, but King County Metro does operate a lot of different lines of service, including the water taxi on the waterfront. And there's a lot of other agencies on the waterfront that are thinking about electrification right now as well. There's Washington State Ferries, there's Kitsap Transit, the Port of Seattle is thinking about electrifying their vessels. So we're working with all of those entities on that planning effort to try to figure out how are we going to bring in that power to the waterfront? How are we going to share that resource so that we can work on maritime electrification for all those different end uses? So given that everybody's doing this electrification work, there's a lot of benefit to coordinating when we're bringing that power in and just, learning from what other agencies are doing in this space as well.
As I mentioned at the start, this is transformative. In 2004, we brought in our first hybrids. In 2020, we retired our last diesel. We are starting to bring in our battery electric buses. Let's look long-term. How quickly, we want this done yesterday, but how quickly or how long are we looking to make this transformation?
Yeah, sure. I can speak to that. So in the short term, I'll say we're really excited about the new battery electric bus base that we're opening in Tukwila. We've mentioned it a few times. So that's opening in 2026. We'll have 120 battery electric buses operating out of that base. And we've mentioned the equity focus that Metro brings to its everything it does, including the service planning. So those buses are going to be on those routes in South King County, in those communities that have historically been impacted by air pollution. Routes in Tukwila, obviously, but also SeaTac, Kent, some of those South King County communities where we operate service. So we're excited about that coming online. Looking forward after that, we've mentioned the Strategic Climate Action Plan that establishes that target for us to transition to 100% zero emissions vehicles. We have urgency to meet that goal. We're working as hard as we can to meet that goal. Obviously, there are some current challenges around funding and just uncertainty in the battery electric space in general, but we're going to keep pushing as fast as we can towards that goal. And I think, there will be some conversations, Councilmember Quinn and others at the county level, I think will be able to help give us guidance about how we can best proceed given those uncertainties. But the goal remains the same. We're still working towards that 100% zero emissions goal, and excited to be opening that base, as I mentioned.
I'm hoping to tee up Autumn on this, but as we've kind of talked about, transportation contributes about 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions, but also it's the building decarbonization and the partnerships that we have. Not only for county facilities, but for other cities, the Green Scorecard. I think it's good information to kind of maybe for the public to know about how hard we're working on that. And it isn't easy. So thinking about long-term, again, 1/3 responsible for transportation, but the building decarbonization is also significant. And so I'm just wondering, maybe Autumn, maybe you can speak to that work, and hopefully people are kind of following suit, but also there are a lot of county facilities, county buildings that are being decarbonized.
Yeah, absolutely. At Metro, the bulk of our greenhouse gas emissions are coming from our vehicles because we have such a large vehicle fleet and we use so much fuel. But we do have large bus bases and lots of other types of facilities that are also using electricity, and some of them are still using natural gas as well. So Our bus spaces are the places where the buses are housed and where we're doing maintenance on the buses and washing them and getting them ready for service. They account for about 80% of our energy use, for our facility energy use. And we have an energy manager who works with our capital division and with our transit facilities division to really look at how they can improve energy efficiency, transition off of natural gas to electricity. We call that decarbonizing our building energy use as much as possible while still ensuring that we can maintain our operations. And then also looking at renewable energy options. So there's a lot of work that's happening on that front. Last year, we measured about a 15% reduction in energy use compared to our baseline, and we avoided about $460,000 in energy cost through things like LED lighting upgrades and upgrading to more efficient air compressors, which we use for like inflating the tires and whatnot. So there's a lot of work happening. The Department of Parks and Natural Resources, they also have, large wastewater facilities, and our Department of Enterprise Services has lots of different types of buildings. So there's a lot of work happening on that front to reduce overall energy use and then transition to electricity and renewable energy and renewable electricity where possible. And then on the community front, we do have some really great programs out there that are offered through the county, through our executive climate office on like energy efficient heat pumps that have, great rebates and cost savings associated for qualifying homes and buildings. So there's a lot of work happening on that decarbonization front and on energy efficiency overall. And yeah, if you're interested, encourage you to check out the county's website.
We've talked about getting involved on a county level. We're going to bring it back down to how you get involved on a metro level. One's an obvious one. Ride the bus. Get on light rail. I'm gonna, give a little applause to Sound Transit, who we help operate their and maintain their fleet. So we'll give them a plug. But what else can we do to make sure that the community understands that we're all in this together?
I can jump in first there. So I think what Al said, number one, ride transit. We need people out there on the buses, on the water taxi, on the light rail. These services are there. They are really wonderful services that can help get you where you want to go. So ride transit, that is a key way that you can really help to reduce your overall environmental and climate footprint. We also have a lot of jobs available at King County that you can be a part of. So come work for Metro. We need more drivers. We need more bus operators. They are really the backbone of our overall system, along with folks like Seth, who are maintaining our facilities and our buses. We have a lot of great positions open, and we really need people to get in there and take those.
I would also add on to join an advisory board, or if you know someone that works at Metro or know someone that's doing amazing work, reach out to them via LinkedIn, cold email them and just check in with them, show your interest in the projects that they're working on, sign up, ask them for an informational interview. I know a lot of folks at Metro love to connect with community, love to connect with young people. So just show your interest and reach out. We'd love to connect with you.
I'll jump in here. We need a behavior change to attain and address climate change. And so I was thinking about the first equity cabinet, and one of the equity cabinet members said, progress moves at the speed of trust. And that's how you change behavior, right? And we can't do everything by regulation. Again, we need behavioral change. And so I'm going to jump out there and say, hey, we need to fund transit. Whatever that looks like. I am one county council member right now, but we need to fund transit. We're not there on Metro Connects. In order to get those cars off the roads, we need them on the buses. And so we need to see ridership go up. I think the other thing that we need is I would just say, I think Obama said like the most impactful person is the ordinary person, to demand that their cities actually develop in a way that addresses climate change. And so it's changing behaviors, but it's also, and I would say for young people, I had the benefit of going to a middle school yesterday. It was very powerful. Those young people are engaged, and they kind of look at you like, what are you doing right now when you have a seat at the table to make my environment okay for me to live in? Right? And I think that is a significant component. So again, the behavioral change and think differently around, again, regulations is only part of the process. We actually need full buy-in, but there's also an economic development message too. We talked a little bit about some of the green jobs, right? Well, my mother was a supplier diversity for Boeing, right? And I would say to the community, we need suppliers that are diverse to help, really kind of the green work, the electrification work, right? To be our suppliers. And I'll just end with this, right? It's an interesting time at the federal level, and it requires greater cooperation from our partners, each other, and to do things in a way that we've never done them before, right? And so we have to partner better together.
That's why you're an elected. You acknowledge that interesting times on federal level. That's a nice way to put it. Before we let the panel have their last words, is there anybody in the audience that has a question? Okay, you willing to meet me halfway?
You know, you look like a cousin of mine. When I first came here, Titus, what's he doing here? How you doing? My name is Paul. I have a couple questions. One, you talked about battery problem. How do you dispose of the batteries?
Yeah, I've talked with our environmental specialist last week about this because I thought this question would come up. Currently, they are recycled. I don't have the specifics on how our batteries are being recycled, but doing some research, I thought it was interesting that the European Union has already established recycling requirements where when one of these electric car or bus batteries is recycled, they have to recover it's like 90% of the, I'm forgetting all my ingredients, cobalt, copper. These things are elements that are reusable. They're just not the easiest to separate, but by setting standards, they are recovering them and then making new batteries out of them. So I was really encouraged by that because that's definitely a concern, is where those batteries go. Ours are recycled. We have contracts to dispose of them and to store them, but I don't have the details on what exactly that means for our batteries. But there is a process for it.
Okay, thank you. Young man at the end, I liked his statement about progress moves at the speed of trust. Okay, so you talked about more people riding the bus and everything. There's a trust issue with the public riding buses. As a matter of fact, there's a trust issue with drivers in Metro. I drove for 10 years, way back, a long time ago. But what is being done to assure the public that there is adequate security on buses, both for the passengers and for the drivers alike? I don't know if that's been addressed. I don't even know if that's part of what you guys are talking about.
That's where I get to come in.
Okay, good.
Metro understands that people are only going to ride if they feel safe. We're making steps, first of all, to increase the number of transit security officers, the people who go on and go through and just check and make sure people are okay. Make sure that people are obeying the right rules and also following, making sure that their fares are paid. We are also increasing the number of licensed police officers, Metro Transit police officers, the enforcement side. More importantly for the drivers, we are in the process of putting in barriers, hard barriers. The sneeze barriers that were up during the pandemic, those are being replaced. They're going to be hard-sided, that are going to wrap around the bus, top to bottom, so nobody can reach in and reach out. We are working on ensuring that the training policies are improved, that we're looking at how do we engage with the public, because we are public affairs. We are, public service, and making sure that gets done. So the focus and the interest is in making sure that people know that it's safe, clean, and reliable to get on that bus.
I'll just add that there's a transit safety task force that's currently ongoing. Multiple council members, but also cities across King County. And I think a big focus is to have better collaboration between law enforcement, the jurisdictions, and the county.
Because
Is there an active shooting policy? Just real quick. Is there an active shooter policy or procedure for Metro that Metro has?
that would be with the Metro Transit Police. And actually, after we're done, I'll give you my card and I can look that up for you.
Thank you. My question is, for my notes, I have like 50% zero emission goals for 2030. And then I have 80% for 2025.
2050.
2050. Thank you. I wrote that down. The question is, what the 100% goal, because there is a 100% goal, right? A zero. And so is there any ideology around that timeline? Thank you.
So, yeah, I appreciate you raising that question. There's two different pieces embedded in that question, I think. One is the county's overall greenhouse gas emission reduction targets that you mentioned. So that's the 50% and the 80% target. We also have, in the climate action plan, we have a separate target that's specifically around the bus transition. And so that target in the 2020 strategic climate action plan is to transition to 100% battery electric bus fleet by 2035. As I mentioned, that's an area that we're working on. We recognize there's some challenges, but that's the current goal that we have. Yeah, thank you for the question.
Thank you for those questions. We're coming up on the end of our panel. Thank you to everybody who's been listening to us and looking at us and seeing us. Want to give everybody an opportunity to have a final word. And why don't we start with the student, the person who's going to be graduating, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you. I just want to end off saying this work that we are doing is very, very important, and it's very personal because it's about people, it's about community, it's about making sure that young people that are growing up in South King County breathe in cleaner air than the generation before them. It's about seeing buses not just as vehicles, but as bridges to opportunity and seeing a better tomorrow. That is a future that I truly believe young people deserve.
Well, we should have ended with Heena. That's so lovely. Yeah, I'll just say thank you to everybody who is a Metro participant. If you are, working at Metro, if you are one of our writers, you really are playing an important role in helping us to address the climate crisis. And it's a really, really great place to work. King County has been just a really lovely home. And it's great to see this level of leadership and commitment to equity and sustainability in our local government and in our transit system. So thanks so much for letting us share this information with you today.
Just longtime Seattle resident. I was born here, and I've ridden the bus for a long time. I used to ride the 10 and the 12 up to where I lived on Capitol Hill, and rode the 14 to my grandmother's house in Mount Baker, and I still love a bus. I'm a bus nerd. I hope that some of you pick up on that what's attractive about it, the ease of it, I can just sit back and wait till I get where I'm going. Hopefully that's something that rubs off on people because it just works, and boy, gosh, you save a lot of money if you're not trying to maintain a car.
Yeah, I just am really excited to be part of this transition. You know, I live in the Rainier Valley. I take the 7 with my kid almost every day. And to me, this zero emissions transition is really setting Metro up for long-term success. I'm excited to be riding that bus with him, you know, when I'm 70. And so I'm excited to support that long-term investment in Metro's future and Metro's success.
I kind of will end where I started last time, that progress moves at the speed of trust, and thinking about the next generation. Again, what are we doing to make sure that their environment is protected? What decisions are we making? Are we willing to kind of get out of our comfort zone, get out of our territorialism and actually work together? So I guess my message is it's a regional challenge that we all must face as individuals. And just, it feels like 5 steps back or 2 steps forward, but we actually have to keep pushing, because otherwise climate will be negatively impacted. And again, we're on record for the work that we do. And I think what I'll also say is this, and what I really like about all the folks that work at Metro who work on the issues related to climate, is that they can actually change government. So I would just say that, again, progress moves at the speed of trust. Let's keep moving forward. And I'll end with that.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you, Seth. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Heena. Thank you, Autumn. If you want to carry on this conversation, I'm going to do something dangerous. My email address for King County Metro is asanders, ASANDERS, @kingcounty.gov. You've got questions, send them my way. These are very willing and bright individuals who will help me answer those questions, because this is way above my pay grade. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate all those who are listening and who are watching us, those in the audience. Earth does deserve more than a day, and we hope we've given you an idea on how you can take those next steps. Thank you. You have a great evening.